Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about my Oscars for 2024, and let's just get started. And this way I'm going to present it is I'm going to show you the list. I'm going to give my justification for each nominee in that category and the winner, and we're going to move on. There you go. All right. So for Best Picture, the first film that we have is The Substance. I think The Substance is the best film of the year without a doubt. Originally, I had Dune Part Two at the number one spot for quite some time, but the more I think about The Substance, the more it doesn't really have a flaw. And for me, I think technically it is a masterpiece. I think Corley Farjad's direction is just perfect, and every technical element of this film is to the maximum. And the performance is really good. The score is really, really memorable. And the makeup design is just one of the best makeup designs, if not the best, I've ever seen in any film. So this film truly captures something. And for me, a film can be as technically masterful as a substance, and it could still not get the number one spot for Best Picture for me. But the reason why I give this film basically the win over Dune Part Two, which I thought could not be beaten the whole year, is because it has a theme that resonates. It has the theme of Demi Moore's character, what she's going through, the struggles, and I think that's what really makes it just one of the best film of the year, basically. So there you go. Next up, we have Dune Part 2. Now, for me, Dune Part 2 is technically it is a really good film. For me, what this film lacks is the rewatch value. I don't see myself rewatching Dune anytime soon. I do think that's because it should be experienced in a theater, and maybe if it has a re-release, I'm gonna go there and check it out to experience the visuals and sound once again. But for me, Dune Part 2 has a really special place in my heart, being one of my favorite theater experiences this year. But it just got beaten by The Substance. So there you go. All right. Next up on the list, we have Challengers. Now, I believe that Challengers is. It had a pretty interesting journey with me. When I first watched it, I did not enjoy it. I fell asleep in the theater. I did not really like it that much, but I gave it a rewatch. And for me, that's when I really got to see the core of the film and the technical prowess that Luca Guadagnino showcases in this film. And the performances by all three leads, particularly Zendaya and Joshua O'Connor, not as Mike Feist is not as good as them, but those two leads for me are rock solid. I think the screenplay is pretty good, the way it's structured, although it doesn't have anything thematically to say, in my opinion. I think the film is just a really cool showcase of how to make a good film and how to make a technically really well made film. And the score is really good, the editing is really good, the sound design is really good. I think this film is just a really great technical showcase from Luca Guadagnino. Next up, I got The Brutalist. Now, The Brutalist is also another film that is technically a masterpiece, right? It is basically one of the best technical achievements with that budget of all time. I mean, like $10 million dollars for what you see in The Brutalist. You could notice that the money was put up on the screen. However, I do think that the film is a bit slow at times, especially the second act. I think there are some really good scenes. However, the overall scene economy is not as well structured. There are some really, really memorable scenes followed by really forgettable scenes. So the film, I think, no drags. It doesn't know when to cut as well. But despite all that, I put it at number four because it is such a memorable theater experience. It is also one of my favorite theater experiences. The intermission idea was such a great idea. Adrian Brody, the performances, not as on high as Guy Pearce as everyone else is high on him, but I just really like this film, and I think the opening and the ending make me I don't know. I just really like the symbolism as well with the upside down images that this film presents, and I think that Brady Corbet, what he did with this budget, I mean, come on, it's monumental, like the poster says. Next up, I have Wicked. Now, Wicked is a film that is basically shot like a blockbuster. So usually I wouldn't have it this high on the list, but the reason why is because it emotionally resonates. It is also one of the most fun theater experiences. It has some great musical numbers. It has not just great performances, really spectacular performances by Jonathan Bailey, and especially the two leads, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. I think the film is great technically, not the cinematography. That's the one aspect that I think really puts this film down. If this film had a better director or a cinematographer, I think it could have honestly been number three. But because it lacks those touristic the artistic aspects that this film really needed, like how Steven Spielberg delivered in West Side Story. And I think the film also is lacking when it comes to the screenplay, just like The Brutalist, in my opinion. So, but I think it is such a good theater experience and the crafts and the performances are just so good, and the songs and the music. it's so good that you just got to put it in the list, and I think it's just deserves it for just being one of the most cinematic films I've seen this year. A Different Man, for me, it was a very strange film. I wasn't as high on it when I first watched it, but something really lingered. I rewatched it and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I think Sebastian Stan is really good. I think Adam Pearson's really good. I think that scene where he's at the bar looking at Adam Pearson singing the karaoke scene is just it conveys so much emotion without a single tear or just a very significant facial expression. That's the beauty of Sebastian Stan, which we'll get into later. And I think that this film is really, really, really engrossing when it comes to the subject matter. I think this and The Substance actually have a lot of similarities, but I think what this film has that The Substance may not is how grounded it is. So they are different approaches with the same subject matter, and I think Adam Pearson makes this film a knockout because of the unique side that he brings to this film. And I'm not as high on the third act a bit, but I liked how the film stick the ending with that final shot of Sebastian Stan smiling, and I just really enjoyed it. All right. Next is Real Pain. Now, this was actually one of my biggest disappointments because I think A Real Pain was really overhyped for me. It was, at first, it was an initial disappointment. I still enjoyed it. I think the first 30 minutes of the film are like some of the best 30 minutes you'll see this year. But I think it does not end as strongly as I wanted to, and I still carry that opinion. But I think that the performances, the writing is so sharp, and the premise is so good, and the idea of what the title of Real Pain represents in this film and what Benji represents is also really thematically rich. And I think what Jesse Eisenberg brought to this film through these characters, and I liked how solely focused this film was on the characters. So I think in that aspect, the film succeeds, and that is the only aspect, in my opinion, that the film needed to succeed to get a place on the spot. It did not have to be one of the most technically immersive films. It did not have to be this really emotional film. I think it just had to show that these are human beings that we can relate to, Benji and David. And I think these are the two best characters written this year, especially Benji and what Kieran Culkin brings in that role. At first, I thought Kieran Culkin did not deserve the awards hype, but the character just lingered in my mind, and I've watched this film months ago. It has still lingered in my mind, and if there's one film that I would want to rewatch right now, it is A Real Pain. And I think this film will be a classic in the future, where people are going to watch it just to have fun, just to cry along, and just to really get tagged along in the journey with these two fellas. And I just really enjoy the scenery as well. Poland is beautiful, so I just really enjoyed this film, and it ended up bumping up in my list a bit, and I watched it like 4 times now. I think it's a great film. All right. Another film that I initially wasn't as high on was The Apprentice. This, like A Real Pain, also really lingered in me. The film, when I first watched, I felt was a bit clunky, and I still think that it is a bit clunky. But what the film does to me is it gives me this impression of Donald Trump that I have not noticed before, and I think it has a message to say, and I also think it is just a really solid film of the interpretations of what happened, and I think that the ending, this is a film that knows how to stick the ending, and I think one of the reasons why is Ali Abbasi, the director of this film, really got the style right. I think this is a film that's going to age really well. Time is going to be on its side, not just because of Trump right now, but because it is really well shot. It is shot in a timeless way. It uses film grains. It uses this Succession-esque style, kind of ironic because Jeremy Strong is obviously the lead in Succession. And I think The Apprentice is just a great example on getting this character that everyone likes, but instead of turning it into a caricature, we get to really see the human being inside that caricature that everyone knows. So this is a Trump that we haven't seen, but for me, what got this film together was the ending, where throughout the film we don't see the Trump that we know. We see glimpses of him at times because of Roy Cohn, but we don't really see the full version, and at the end it hits you with that real version that we know of him today. I think Sebastian Stan knocks it out of the park. Jeremy Strong, I don't get why people are saying that Jeremy Strong is better than Sebastian Stan. For me, Sebastian Stan runs away with the film spotlight, but Jeremy Strong is also really good. He's rock solid as a supporting the lead performance, and I just think this film is great. I think some parts could have been less clunky, but I think that the dialogue is really good. I think that it is realistic. I think that it is basically like a documentary of Trump's life before. All right, Furiosa. Now this is a film that is a bit different from the two films I mentioned. So originally I had this really high up on the list, like number 4 and number 5. When I first watched it, I really had a blast, but it's not a film that really sticks with me. It kind of reminds me of just like a blockbuster, but I'm gonna still put it in because it is technically immersive. It is a great achievement when it comes to character building and storytelling through world building. I think it expands on the series of Mad Max Fury Road beautifully, and I got more invested in the character. I think the best addition to this film is Chris Hemsworth, who we'll get into later for sure. I think he is an excellent addition to this world. I think he is what makes this film work in a sense, and I really like the technicals. I think the visuals could look a bit cartoonish sometimes, and it kind of drags a bit, and it's not a film I'd rewatch. It isn't a film that has a big thematic messaging that I'd want to revisit. Is it a film that I'd study? No. But is it a film that I had a really good theater experience in where I was immersed, where I was at the edge of my seat, where I was in suspense? Yes. Does that mean I'm going to rewatch it every single day? No. But I think it still deserves to be in the list of 2024, one of the best films, because of that experience that it gave me. Okay. Now, this is a unique film. I debated again whether this or Smile 2 should have gone in, but at the end of the day, I gave this the edge because of its unique ability. I think this film is the most unique film I've ever seen. I've never seen a film like this. Not even silent films and Looney Tunes are this creative. What? Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm just gonna get the negative out of the way. This film drags. This film drags a lot. I wouldn't say that I'm engrossed in every scene that it's presenting, but because of the way that it presents the scene, I think that's what works with this film. I think the director is an auteur when it comes to capturing his vision. I think this film cements him as an auteur because I'll explain why. No one else could have made this film the way he did. This is what we call a singular vision when it comes to cinema. This Mike Cheslick had a singular vision that he wanted to execute, and he did everything that he could with this low budget, with a few actors, with these costume designs that didn't make any sense. And for me, I think that's the beauty of film. I think it's that this is groundbreaking cinema, in my opinion, and I think that's why it deserves to be talked about. And I also really enjoyed it because while I was watching it, I was like, how did they do that? How did they do this? How did they come up with this gag? How did they come up with the costumes? How did they come up with the idea? And these are the questions that intrigue me more, and it still does more than Smile 2, where I thought Smile 2 was technically immersive. It was really fun, but I think Hundreds of Beavers does something new with the medium, whereas Smile 2, you kind of see that in every Blumhouse horror film, in every big studio horror film. You kind of get that sense of style, but for this, it is singular. It is something that studios cannot mandate filmmakers to do. It is something that a filmmaker should believe in, and you could really see the vision throughout the film. So I think that's what works. And that covers our Best Picture category. All right, moving on to the Best Director category. Corley Farge wins for The Substance for just making a groundbreaking film, I think. The film is just such a unique vision, and it is an auteur at a helm of a horror film that is brimming with an original concept that it's never been seen. The mirror, and it's not just showy, it has this really good subtle scene, like when Demi Moore looks at the mirror and does the whole like, oh, should I go out, should I not? I think that whole scene could not have worked better with a different director. I mean, it couldn't have worked better with a different director at the helm of it. I think Corley Farge deserves this win, hands down, for the execution of all the technical categories and innovating the genre and prosthetic designs once and for all. Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2 for just making a really good technical masterpiece. He would have won in any other year if it wasn't against Corley Farge. I think Dune is a perfect example of a directorial achievement because it succeeds at every front possible. Technicals, performances, everything is improved from the first one, and I believe that Denis Villeneuve has really stood the test of time in making only good films and never made a bad film. Brady Corbett for The Brutalist. The film's problem lies with the screenplay, not the visuals and the direction of the actors and the direction of this whole film. I could feel the command of Brady Corbett through the screen. I do admit that some scenes are kind of slow, but that will pay the price in editing instead of directing, because I think the way that this film comes together at the end could not have been possible with another director. And we have Luca Guadagnino for Challengers. I think Challengers is a very experimental film, but I think it also is a film that wouldn't have worked without Luca Guadagnino. And another film that wouldn't have worked without the filmmaker, like I mentioned, is Hundreds of Beavers. I think I discussed enough about Hundreds of Beavers. So there you go. This is the director lineup. All right, best lead performance. I'll try to get this as fast as I can, but number one is Cynthia Erivo for, I at first was a bit skeptical putting her one because I did have this thing where, oh, should I really put a wicked performance at one? But Cynthia Erivo deserves it. she did everything she could to get that slot, so she deserves it. Number two, Sebastian Stan for the subtlety he brings. I think Sebastian Stan is amazing in A Different Man, and The Apprentice, which we'll talk about later. I think he's just a great actor. This was his year, and that one scene at the karaoke, the bar, whatever you want to call it, just get him his Oscar. And the ending, like, he is really good, and his, even with that prosthetics and you can't even see his face, he also does acting through body language, which I think is harder to do than face acting, so kudos to him. Next we have Timothée Chalamet for Dune Part 2. I think Timothée Chalamet did everything you could. The only thing he didn't do is cry. He really stepped up his game. I think this is his best performance since Call Me By Your Name. I was blown away by his scene, the rock scene, the ending where it's his eyes looking at Christopher Walken with those blue eyes. It's really good work from Timothée Chalamet. Naomi Scott for Smile 2, I think, is the best horror performance of the year. I think she did everything a horror final boss could do. I think the film wouldn't work without her. I think she is really underrated and overlooked this year. I think she deserves a spot. Next, we have Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. He did not nail the voice, but he nailed the accent. And not just that, he nailed the mannerisms. And not just that, he nailed actually playing the character as a human being instead of a caricature. The film would not have worked if Sebastian Stan decided to do an SNL skit. Fortunately, he did not do that. He gave us a really grounded human being in Trump that actually made us see through his lens. And I think the ending is his Oscar scene. I think the ending is such a brilliant ending where he just nails everything. He goes through everything in this film. So there you go. Demi Moore for The Substance. At first, when I saw this, I was like, that role is basically too small. She dies and she never comes back except the end where it's not even her. It's like CGI. So I don't know if this is even considered a full lead. And I originally had Margaret Qualley in front. What really got me was I think this performance stuck with me more. I think Demi Moore gives a lot of emotion to the film. It's the film's beating heart. And I think the scene with her wiping the makeup and stuff is great work. And later on, when she becomes older and a bit crazier, that is what's really, really fascinating. I think she had a lot of fun, and you could tell, yeah, I think it's a great performance. And Adrien Brody for The Brutalist. I think Adrien Brody is great in The Brutalist. I think he does overact sometimes a bit, but I actually prefer his moments of subtlety with like Felicity Jones or Guy Pearce, where he shows vulnerability through subtlety instead of yelling to everyone. I think his yelling scenes are actually the worst parts of his performance that put him down. Another person I feel that way is Coleman Domingo. I really like the scenes where he listens and he acts with the actors. He shows vulnerability through acting, but I don't like it when he screams. And I think the moment where he screams comes up a bit out of character for me. I think also I was not that high on Sing Sing, so maybe that also affected it. But even nonetheless, I think Coleman Domingo is an absolute showstopper in Sing Sing. Fernanda Torres is the epitome of subtlety. I think she is the best in subtle acting in this category, besides Sebastian Stan. The scene with the ice cream shop where she just looks around the families and you get the context, I think it's pretty good. I think she's the best also at using subtext in her performance. I think she nails that. And the eye acting is also pretty great. I think Margaret Qualley for The Substance is a really showy performance that is not subtle at all. I think it works in the film's favor. It was either her or Mikey Madison, but the more I think about Anora, the more I don't think it should be nominated for any award, besides ensemble and the acting categories. But I think the problem with Mikey Madison was that the performance felt very one note, and towards the end, it felt a bit too sudden for me when she changes. I think it's a lot of screaming. It's basically like Margot Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street, except that had more nuance. I think Mikey Madison was the definition of playing a character instead of a human being that I could sympathize with, and that mostly is also in the faults of Sean Baker as a filmmaker for making us observe her from a further angle than from Anora's perspective, considering that the film is called Anora. Alright, next up, so this is the category that I was most frustrated with because most of these performances are lead performances, but I didn't think it was fair to put them in lead because, I mean, they are technically co-leads, and there is another singer lead that is dominating the film. Ariana Grande, Kieran Culkin, these performances I am wrestling with whether they should be supporting or lead, but you know what? I'm going to put them in supporting so I don't get a headache for now. I think Ariana Grande is wonderful in Wicked. I think she's perfect. I think comedic timing wise she's amazing. I think musically she is tremendous. I think Her face acting is great. I think she understood the assignment. I think the ending works not just because of Cynthia Erivo, but because of Ariana Grande. I think those two delivered the best performances of the year. Next, I have Kieran Culkin, where I really think that this is a special performance. I think it's very different from his performance in Succession. I think he shows a lot of vulnerability through his eyes. I think he shows a lot of grief towards humor. And I think the film works because of his character. I think the film works because of him as an actor. I don't care if he's playing himself. He should do that more. I think for those of you who watch Jay Kelly, it is damn difficult to play yourself in a film. I think most of us who don't do acting don't really realize that. But what really is playing yourself? Because to an extent, this is a character that you've made. So I think it's very different from Kieran Culkin. I think he is using the best of his abilities. He's playing with his strengths. I don't think that's playing himself necessarily. I think he's just doing what he's good at, and I think he should continue if that works for the film. And in the case of A Real Pain, it 100% worked for the film. Now, this is a performance that most people will disagree with me, but I'm gonna justify it. Hugh Jackman for Deadpool and Wolverine. If you put this film in a dramatic performance, he would be in Oscar contention. His scene in the car when he gets mad at Deadpool is Oscar worthy in my opinion. I think it's a great monologue and it works because of his performance. I think the scene where he's in the fire and he's being more vulnerable shows the duality of this performance. I think Hugh Jackman really took this seriously, and I think he honestly deserves a lot of flowers for this. I think he's great in this film. I think Hugh Jackman really, really deserves to get nominated for this. I think he brought a lot of heart to the film. I think the film would not have worked without him. And I just think that he's a great, great presence in this film. And this is what a supporting performance should be. I also don't want Deadpool and Wolverine to get a huge above the line nomination, but Hugh Jackman just really pushed his way into it. So my hands are tied. I have no idea what to do. Chris Hemsworth for Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. This was my original winner for Best Supporting Actor. I think he's really good. I just think it doesn't resonate with me. The performance doesn't stick with me. He's pretty good. He really absorbs the character. The film does not work without his performance. The film actually works because of his performance. But yeah, I just think Hugh Jackman did a better job. I think Ariana Grande, Kieran Culkin, they did a better job. I think Chris Hemsworth is really solid, but I think it's just not good enough to win this category. All right. Adam Pearson is a great performance. I think he's a scene-stealing performance. I just think he lacks the emotional depth of the character. But as a supporting performance, I think it's pretty perfect. I think he did what he had to do, and he left the film. And without, again, it's a film that he steals every scene he's in, and the singing scene, again, would not work without him. Felicity Jones in The Brutalist. I think she's the emotional anchor of the second act. I think she has the great final scene where she confronts Guy Pearce's character. I think she has a lot of tremendous scenes. Not as Oscar baity as I've heard some people say it is, but I think it is just a great performance nonetheless. I think she shows a lot of restraint as well and listening, which is also very charitable for actors to do. And I think she does this performance justice through that type of performance, which is great. Next up, I have Jonathan Bailey. His performance really grew on me. Originally, I did not even have him sniffing with the top 10, but when I rewatched the film recently, I just really saw a great performer. I think he's one of the reasons why the film works as well and why it's so fun. After he enters the film becomes so much fun. The dancing through life sequence honestly makes sense just because of him. And I think this is what a supporting performance should do if we think about it. It's supposed to steal the scene, it's supposed to support the lead actresses, and it's supposed to just really make the film more immersive without overshadowing the actors or stealing the actors' scenery. And I think that's exactly what Jonathan Bailey did. So he understood the assignment. Next, I have Karen Karagulian for Enora. I think this is a great performance. I think he steals a lot of the scenes. I think he's not an integral part of the film, but I think he's just damn good in the film. He does his job. He shows up and he leaves. I think he really commits to this character. I don't know if this is how he is in real life. Maybe that's why Sean Baker gave him the role. He's a longtime collaborator with Sean Baker, but I think he did a damn good job. Next up is Dennis Quaid, who's also a scene-stealing performance in The Substance. He's only in like 3 scenes, but every scene he's in, I'm like locked in. I think the close-ups really work in favor of him, and the really, really, really close-ups are one of my favorite scenes in The Substance. So I just really like Dennis Quaid, and I think he did a great job in The Substance. Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. Again, I said I'm not that high on his performance like other people are. Look, he's literally in the top 7 for most of you guys. For me, I think he's good. I think he supports pretty well. I don't think he's better than Sebastian Stan. I don't even think he has an Oscar scene, but I think he really fully transforms into the character in a way that supports the film instead of overshadowing it. And I think that's why he deserves the recognition. Not as high on it, but I think still he did a damn good job to warrant his spot in this top 10. Alright, so for Best Original Screenplay, we have The Substance winning for that high concept of genre, and we have a real pain for delivering one of the most thematically rich characters, and I love the monologues in this film, even if it does remind me a little bit of theater acting, but I think Jesse Eisenberg knocked it out of the park with a character design, and writing Benji in and of itself should he deserves that nomination. A Different Man, I think, balances humor and the satire pretty well, and also the tragedy that comes with it. I think it balances a lot of genres differently. It also has body horror at one point. I think that's the definition of a great script that balances a lot of genres, and the dialogue is also pretty good, and the themes are pretty good. So I think it's a very rich screenplay. Challengers, I think, is a bit of a messier screenplay, but I think it also has a really interesting structure. I think the direction is what carries it mostly, which is why the top three are above it. But I think it's still a really good screenplay that is a very unique screenplay. I've never seen a screenplay like this, and I really like the unconventional nature of it. It really plays with time in a way that's confusing, but also really fun, like tennis. And I think it has a lot of great metaphors when it comes to relationships. It's not thematically deep, but it is pretty fun. The Apprentice, I think, is also a bit messy screenplay-wise, but I think the ending really sticks with me. And the film itself really sticks with me. The dialogue is pretty great. It's pretty funny sometimes. It's pretty serious. I think the film understands Trump as a character and Roy Cohn. It understands it, and it has a lot of memorable dialogue that I could quote right now. The three rules: attack, attack, attack. I mean, come on. It has some great dialogue. I think the structure could have been better, but no screenplay is perfect. I think it's still a pretty good screenplay, in my opinion. Adapted screenplay is definitely the weaker category of the two. I really like my top two, Dune Part 2 and Hitman. The rest of the nominees, oh sorry, this is not supposed to be here. The rest of the nominees for me are a bit but let's get to it. Dune Part 2 is going to win. I think it's a perfect adaptation of the book and made the best changes. The dialogue is perfect. Just give it the screenplay award. Hitman, I think, has really good screenplay. I love the dialogue. Richard Linklater really cooked with the dialogue. I love the scene where he goes in with the paper and like I know the notes app scene I think is really good. And I really like the dynamics in the play, and I really like the unexpected nature of the film. I think it's a very good screenplay. I think the problem with the film is the direction and the bland editing. And Conclave is a film that I didn't fully get behind, but the screenplay is really memorable. The way that the film escalates is pretty memorable. The dialogue is so fun. The characters, the building, the world building within the Conclave, I think it's a pretty great script. The problem lies somewhere else through the ending, but I think it's a great script. Inside Out 2 expands the world of Inside Out pretty well. The introduction of anxiety is what really got this film into the screenplay category and how it deals with it. I think it's a great lesson for people to understand anxiety better, and the way it simplified it did not hurt, it actually helped the film. Next, we have Furiosa, the lack of competition. I mean, it is part of Best Picture, and Chris Hemsworth got some good monologues, and it is a good revenge flick. I would not call it one of the best screenplays of the year, but the adapted race is pretty weak, so I guess I'm putting it in here. And it did have a pretty fun structure, so there you go. A pretty good backstory, too, for Furiosa. Best cinematography, I think Dune Part 2 is one of the most stunning films of all time. The Brutalist would win if it wasn't for Dune. I think the substance, the usage, the uniqueness, the colors, the close-ups, the camera angles, the extreme close-ups, the more close-ups. Evil does not exist. I think it's just a beautiful looking film that deserves the mention. And Nickel Boys, I had over Nosferatu because I think Nickel Boys really does something with the art form that has not been done before. I mean, people have used first POV, but I think the way Nickel Boys does it and the stylistic choices I think really resonate. I think the film is beautiful to look at. I think it's a great achievement in cinematography, and I think even if I wasn't as high as the film as others were, I still could recognize that the cinematography of this film was pretty brilliant and deserves to be recognized in this category. Alright, now for best editing, The Substance is one of the best edited films of all time. The scene where she looks at the mirror, the sequences, the montages, the pacing, everything's perfect. Hundreds of Beavers did something with the art form that genuinely has never been done before, and the film is literally editing. There is no screenplay. It's literally editing, guys. The visual effects are even editing, so there you go. Challengers is also really unconventional. I think the top three, this category is pretty stacked. Dune Part 2 is also just perfectly paced. It's not as innovative as the top three, but it's also really good in its own right. And Wicked, at first I was like, yeah, some sequences are too long. The first act isn't that good. But honestly, though, the musical elements the sequences in Wicked work because of the editing, and the transitions are pretty memorable to me. I think Wicked's a pretty great edit. It's pretty great editing. I think the ending, Defying Gravity, works because of the editing too. I think it's a tremendous feat, so it deserves the editing nom. Production design, I mean, Wicked, obviously, Dune Part 2, obviously, The Brutalist is a beautiful set. Nosferatu is also really builds this world that you can just submerge into. The Substance has really good handmade sets that you could, practical sets that you can actually like hit and you could feel. And it recreates some of the scenes from Shining. Not really, but I mean, I think it does a pretty good job. And it has some really good memorable sets that were built. So I really like it. Yeah. And that bathroom is pretty iconic from The Substance, so. Costume design, I think Wicked is the clear winner here. I think Dune Part 2 is really good. Gladiator 2 has some really great costumes, even if I didn't like the film that much. The Substance has really memorable costumes. Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore wear some really great stuff. Conclave, at first I was like, ain't this a bit too ordinary? But they really made these divas as fashionable as they can, and I really like the fashion in the film for some reason. I think the costume really stuck with me. It left a great visual in my head, so there you go. Best makeup in air, The Substance, obviously, A Different Man, obviously, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, Wicked because of the where the hair is done, and the green makeup really works for this. Without proper green makeup, I don't think it would have worked as well. Nosferatu for Bill Skarsgård, Dune Part 2 has been done, but this time they added Austin Butler, and honestly, Timothée Chalamet's hair enough deserves the Dune Part 2 slot. Different Man, the scene where he peels the makeup off is so effective, and The Substance is The Substance. The best makeup and hair style winner of all time. Best visual effects, we have Dune Part 2, Better Man, The Substance for the practical effects as well, Furiosa, and Wicked. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why these are the nominees. I left out Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes because it's been done before, and I think Better Man did a better job and more innovative. I think it is more stylistic as well. I think Alien Romulus has also been done, so these 5 nominees are visuals that really left me in awe of the spectacle. I think Wicked left me in awe. The whole sequence works because of Wicked, and the flying scenes were done really well, and the animals were really well. Furiosa has some incredible wonders. The Substance is it's just genre conventions out of the water. I mean, come on. And Better Man is Better Man. Dune Part 2 is Dune Part 2. Best sound, I think The Substance and Dune Part 2, it's a really tight competition, but I think the way that The Substance used sound, it gives it the edge over Dune because Dune has been done in Dune Part 1. I think The Substance really took sound and made it its own, like how The Zone of Interest made it its own, and The Sound of Metal made it its own. I think that The Substance is great. Furiosa has some incredible chase sequences, and the whole film is basically sound design. Better Man also has some really musically great sequences with great sound design that I noticed right off the bat, even if I didn't like the film as much as the other nominees. Hundreds of Beavers has some of the most creative sound design I've ever seen. It is just really inventive. I loved the sound design and the editing of the film. We got the last category, which is one of my favorite categories. I think The Brutalist score is a classic. Dune Part 2 is great. Challengers is a classic. The Substance is iconic and queer. Just has a really good score. I think Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, congrats on your double nomination. And this is a pretty stacked lineup. I love this lineup. And The Brutalist takes it, though. I think The Brutalist is the bum 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 score. And not just that, I love the soundtrack. The bus is really good. Steel. The ending, the upbeat monotone, like the modern version of the theme, I think is really good. Daniel Blumberg just really cemented himself as a really exciting composer. I can't wait to see his work in The Testament of Manly. Who knows, he might get nominated next year in my 2025 favorites. So stay tuned for that, I guess. And yeah, that's it for the awards. Thank you for watching.